And you're live with Dr. Frankel.
Good morning, Dr. Frankel. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dr. Jones. How are you doing?
It doesn't get any better than this. Talk to one of the leading ladies who have helped many of us over the years in business, so I am thrilled today.
Well, good. That makes two of us then.
The nice girl concept, when did you begin to create that whole concept before we get into today's revision? When did you start talking about that concept?
About 10 years ago, because this is the 10th anniversary edition of the book. So, it was about 2003, 2004.
Why do you think that particular term and your books have resonated so much with business women and men throughout the entire world?
I think for two specific reasons. One is the format of the book itself, and that is it's easy to read and it's prescriptive. It's not theoretical. You can open up to any page and really find news you can use, something that you can immediately put into practice. So that's number one. The second is, especially for women, I think they see themselves on every single page. At least that's what they tell me. They say, in the first book we had 101 mistakes. They say, I've made all 101 of those mistakes. So I think they resonate with the content.
Well, let's look at the title. Nice girls don't get the corner office. Then you added this one word, still don't get the corner office. Unconscious mistakes women make that sabotage their careers. Why did you decide to revise it and update it?
Well, as I say in the book, it was the book that I never wanted to write, because I felt if we had come far enough in the 10 years since I wrote it the first time, that we wouldn't need a book like this. And that would be my wish, is that women had come so far that we didn't need a book like this. But as I traveled around the world and I talked to young people, I realized, you know what? The millennials are experiencing the exact same thing that older women have experienced for years, that the discrimination, the bias has not gone away. And I wanted to introduce this to a new generation of women who were probably, 14 years old when it first came out. So that's one of the reasons. And the second reason is because I had more I wanted to say. As I did travel around the world, women would come up to me and say, well, why didn't you talk about this? Or what about this? And I think to myself, I just didn't think of it why I didn't talk about it, and I have more that I want to say. So we added 30% new material to the book.
So if I happen to be in Pasadena, California, which is one of my favorite places, I used to go to a Houston's restaurant. I'm not sure if they're still there in Pasadena, and I want to be involved with Corporate Coaching International. What kind of things can I expect from your organization?
Yeah, we were one of the very first coaching companies in the country, number one. So what you can expect are people who understand what business coaching is. There's been a proliferation of coaches in the market, but not all coaches are created the same. So we use only people who are seasoned, who have experience in business, and who focus exclusively on leadership development, transitions, and how to create an effective team. So that's really what differentiates ourselves. And you know what? I'm not sure if Houston's is still there. I stopped going there only because it was so noisy.
But I love the food there, and it was a wonderful place to go. My investment banker was there, so I had to go out and hang out with him in Pasadena. Let's look at some of the things that you have in this book. Avoiding office politics, mistake number 13. Tell me about that.
Yeah, women tend to look at politics as something smarmy or something to be avoided, kind of dirty. And as I tell them, politics is not a four-letter word. That if you avoid office politics, then you are not able to capitalize on relationships that are going to help you in the long term. Because I want women to just replace the word politics with the word relationships. That's all politics are relationships. It's building strong, 360-degree relationships that will support you throughout your career.
Now, do you teach women how to play the game safely and within bounds?
Yes, I absolutely do. And this is something that changed since the first book. This is something that I really expanded on much more. And one of the reasons is because the playing field changes for men and women, and for Caucasian women and women of color. And I didn't talk about the playing field changing for people of color, women of color, in the first book, frankly, because I wasn't brave enough. But when I talked about it from the platform for the past 10 years, women came up to me and thanked me and said, you have put words to how we feel. And that is, when you picture a playing field, for men, the boundaries are practically non-existent, right? And then as boundaries get narrower, it's easier to go out of bounds. And so for women, the boundaries get narrower, particularly in the area of assertiveness. But then try being a woman of color. The boundaries are even narrower. So I help people to understand, first, the whole concept of boundaries, the playing field, strategies, and how to play the game at the edge of the field. Because if you play the game smack dab in the middle of the field, you'll never win a game.
One conversation that minorities, in terms of people of color, have sometimes as it relates to being involved in non-family businesses or being in the corporate world is their name or the use or non-use of a picture. Do you ever address those type of issues? Because that is one concern, because sometimes people may feel that their name or their image may automatically eliminate them from the consideration process.
I'm not sure if you're talking about on resumes or you're talking about in it could be LinkedIn or Facebook. Is there a particular place you're thinking about, Dr. Jones?
It could be, any aspect. It could be, if a person was given an unusual name, and so if it's concerning resume, or it can be concerning communications in office, it's concerning putting their picture on a brochure, whatever the case may be. But there is a conversation that happens many times is, how do I present my name? Because I don't want, if I say my name may sound ethnic, I don't want a person to not even think about my consideration within the company or even social media. Or if I put my image, I don't want that image to automatically eliminate me. That is a conversation that minorities do have.
Okay, so that now I understand. So if that's the case, if you do have an ethnic sounding name or if you are a person of color, I don't think that's something to hide. I think that makes it even more important that you present the rest of yourself as a very strong brand, a brand to be contended with. So that, for example, if it's on your Facebook page, don't have anything superfluous or, what's the word I'm looking for? Or, don't have anything on there that would make people think that you're anything less than a serious, professional person. So that I'm not one to hide who you are, but I am one to put the best foot forward. So that if you're going to put your picture on there, then make sure you're also putting on there that what you've achieved, some of your accomplishments, being direct and straightforward, not being afraid to toot your own horn. Did that answer your question, Dr. Jones?
Well, I have the conversation, but I didn't know whether or not you have information because, again, as a coach, that's a consideration. Because let's say, for example, the two-edged sword of diversity, okay? Let's say, for example, even though you may be of a particular culture, society, tradition, but your concepts are global. You're not necessarily, ethnic as whatever your ethnicity may call you, African American or Indian or whatever, your background. You're global. So, but you do want to be considered when there's diversity, because a lot of times companies say we want diversity of whatever. But sometimes another challenge on the two-edged sword of diversity is I don't want to be the one that gives the black perspective or the minority perspective. I am a minority, but I also can bring a global perspective. Does that make any sense?
It makes absolute sense. And I think, that's part of the problem of being the only. The research shows that the tipping point is 3. So if you have 3 women on a board, if you have 3 people of color in a department, that the tipping point is 3. But often there's only 1. And whether you are an African-American person, Latina, gay, doesn't matter. If you're the only one of a certain kind, then yeah, you're absolutely right. Everybody looks to you to be the spokesperson for that group. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, I can't speak for everybody who's like me. But I can tell you that I have a unique perspective, and here's what it is. So that's how I suggest people handle that challenge, is just call it for what it is, and then say something that's going to wow them. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, why do I have to wow them, whereas the Caucasian male doesn't have to? Well, Dr. Jones, it's like I tell people all the time, I don't make the rules, I just report them. That white males are the ones who circumscribe what the rules are. And if we have to present ourselves a little bit differently in order to be seen as contenders in the ring, then so be it. And if you don't like the playing field that requires you to do that, then find a playing field that doesn't require you to do that. I'm not saying everybody should. I can't tell you how many African American women I have coached that were sent to me for coaching because they were described as angry black women. Now, frankly, I didn't find them any such thing. But that's the tag that goes along with direct, smart, strong, straightforward African American women. So African American women need to understand that that's the perception. Now, you have to deal with the perception because that's how people are going to deal with us. And if you don't want to be on the playing field that that's what they think, then find another playing field. And I don't say that sarcastically. I mean, find a playing field that's going to appreciate you, that the boundaries are going to be broader. Does that make sense?
Makes a whole lot of sense. That's why you're the go-to person. Mistake number 82, asking permission. Tell me about that.
Yeah, women tend to ask permission more than men. Men ask forgiveness. Women ask permission. We live in a society where we expect children to ask permission, not adult women. And so one of the things that I tell women is every time you ask permission, you relegate yourself to the level of a child. And so what you want to do instead is you don't want to come across as a loose cannon. You want people to know what you're going to do, and you want them to give you input, but you don't want to ask permission. So instead, turn that into inform. Say something like, I plan to do X, Y, Z. If you have a problem with that, you can let me know. Or you don't even have to add that. You can just say, I just plan to do X, Y, Z, just want to give you a heads up on it. And you can assume that if the person has a problem with it, they'll let you know.
Now, it seems like a companion question or mistake to that one is reluctancy to negotiate. Elaborate on that concept.
Yeah, particularly women, see negotiation as confrontation. Women make great negotiators when they're negotiating for someone else, not when they're negotiating for themselves. And so, and part of that is because they don't feel as if they have a sense of entitlement to be able to negotiate to win. And there's another piece of this, Dr. Jones, and that's the most recent research has shown when women negotiate to win, their fears are true. Their fear is that they're going to be seen as pushy or kind of bitchy. And unfortunately, the research is showing that's exactly how they are seen. So women are between a rock and a hard place. You know, if you don't negotiate to win, you're never going to get what you want. If you do, you may get called names. So you need to decide for yourself which is the hill that you're willing to die on. That's number one. Number two, you need to differentiate relationships. That often women won't even negotiate to win. Well, for example, when you're buying a car. Now, that's a transactional relationship. That's not a personal relationship. Women treat everything as a personal relationship. So they treat everybody as if they're going to be sitting down at their Thanksgiving table when nothing can be further from the truth. So once you start differentiating relationships, then you can start saying, well, you know, this is a relationship where I'm never going to see this person again. I can take some risks. It doesn't give you the right to demolish them or treat them disrespectfully, but you can take some risks, as opposed to a personal relationship where you're really going to want to be more careful to create a win-win negotiation.
Why do some women refuse perks?
Again, it's a sense of entitlement. That's number one. So it's refusing, and it's also not asking for, I should say. But in terms of refusing, they don't feel as if they have a sense of entitlement, and they don't want to be the tall poppy. They don't want to stand out. It's like, you know, I talk about a woman in the book who was given a promotion that entitled her to, it was a larger office. I'm not sure it was a corner office, but it was a larger office. And she said, no, I'll just stay where I am. And when I pressed her about it, it was really because she didn't want to stand out from everybody else. She didn't feel as if she really deserved that or just didn't want to look different than everyone. So women really need to get over that because those perks are a sign of success, and people treat you in accordance with those perks.
Does your book deal with current issues like body ink and piercing?
Oh, yes, it does, and that was something new that I added. 10 years ago, and as I said, another reason why I wrote this book, because there were certain things that weren't on the radar screen 10 years ago. Although people had body ink and piercings back then, they tended to keep them somewhat hidden, and now it's like they're hanging out all over the place. And, as I say in the book, do not get a tattoo if you've had even one drink, if you've had one snort, if you've had one toke, if you are with friends who are goading you to do this. Do not get a tattoo for those reasons. Or if you have a boyfriend that thinks a tramp stamp is really hot, don't do it. They're not good reasons to do it. Again, if you look at the literature, it suggests that people who have more body art are seen as less professional. And, while it may seem like a great idea when you're in college or you're on vacation, once you get back to reality and you've got to show up to work with tattooed sleeves, it's not going to fly for you. It's not going to work well for you.
What's wrong with wearing reading glasses around your neck?
That I really wrote for older women. That when older women wear reading glasses around their neck, it calls attention to their age. Men don't do that. Men don't wear their glasses around their neck. Women do it because we're kind of practical, and I have to admit that I do it around my own office. But I'm not going to do it when I'm standing in front of a group or I'm making a presentation to a client. So women need to understand that that's going to call attention to your age, and we live in an ageist society. It's okay when men get older and they're seen as distinguished. As women get older, not so much. Although that's changing a little bit. I just was reading an article this morning about that. That's changing a little bit.
Since we on the whole dress code thing, what about the wrong hairdo?
Yeah, you need to really look at your entire dress as a package. That's first of all. And before you go to work in the morning, you put your back to the mirror, and then you turn around quickly and look. And what's the one thing that stands out to you? Well, that one thing that stands out might be the thing that's most inappropriate. Could be lipstick that's too bright. It could be a skirt that's too short. When it comes to hair, every woman I know loves to have long, silky hair, right? And so they have this long hair, and long hair makes you look less mature. You also tend to play with long hair more than you do with short hair. So what women need to do is, if they want to be taken seriously, I'm not saying cut your hair. I'm just saying you may need to put your hair up, particularly when you're going to make a certain kind of presentation, when you want to be taken seriously. There's a reason why we have like a stereotypical image of the librarian with her hair in a bun and she's so serious. There's a kernel of truth to that.
What about the use of wigs? Because when you mention long hair, it seems like a lot of people are wearing wigs, women wearing wigs, and it seems to call more attention to your hair than as it being just an accessory to the whole package. You know what I'm saying? It just like everything kind of complements everything, but wow, I'm noticing now this big hair.
Yeah, the wigs, you're interesting because it is interesting because it can call attention more to you. And it can be a man who has a toupee on. And if it's not a good one, if it's not a good wig, if it's not a good toupee, people are going to be looking at it and thinking about that and not about what you're saying. So I don't have a problem with people wearing wigs. Just make sure it's a really good one and that it's not really possible to tell that that's a wig. Because, as I said, otherwise it's a distraction to your package.
Now, what about the subject of weight? I know everyone doesn't have to look like a supermodel, but does their body shape and the way they carry their weight influence their presentation at the office?
Yes, it does. And again, research shows that, particularly obese people, and maybe Chris Christie is an exception to this rule, but particularly obese people don't seem to have the same opportunities that people have more control over their weight. And I like what you say, that you don't have to be a model, but you have to look fit, because that's part of what people consider healthy. And I generally tell people that you should be within, 15 to 20 pounds of your ideal weight. And as you get beyond that, people, when people are very overweight, we can start to question their willpower, their motivation, their neatness, their health, and you don't want people questioning that about you. But on top of that, most importantly, it's good to be healthy. It's just good to be healthy, and if you're at a healthy weight, that's what should be most important to you.
Let me ask you something else, and I'm not sure if you covered it or not, but I just want to throw this out, and you always are very frank about everything, or very Lois about everything. I don't want to say it that way. I noticed
Thank you.
Number 129, you say playing the gender card. It seems like now also people are playing the sexual orientation card. And, I'm not naive that everybody's doing it because they want to be liberated. I think some people now are using it as a negotiating ploy. So can a person not only play the sexual orientation as well as gender card to their disadvantage?
Oh, absolutely. You can play any card to your disadvantage because, as soon as you play a card, think about it. A card is a game, isn't it? And so as soon as you play a card, whether it's the sexual orientation, whether it's gender, whether it's race, you're engaged in a game. And people don't like to be manipulated, and people sniff that out. So I'm not saying that you should not play the card if there's something that you feel strongly about isn't right, or you're being treated unfairly. I'm not saying you shouldn't play that in those cases, but when you play it frivolously, you're playing a dangerous game, and it's going to backfire on you.
We're talking about nice girls still don't get the corner office, unconscious mistakes women make that sabotage their careers. This particular chat will be featured along with my previous chats with Dr. Lois at dralvin.com, dralvin.com on Facebook. And also, Dr. Lois, if you want to, you can join me on Twitter later on the day at Dr. Alvin Jones. That's where we feature brilliant minds like yours on an ongoing basis. Give me a final thought and tell me how to get a copy of this new book that's revised and updated.
Yeah, my final thought is, when people hear the title, Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, they think that I'm going to be talking about being mean and nasty. Nothing is further from the truth. You can't be the nice little girl or the nice little boy. You were taught to be in childhood and expect to achieve your adult goals. You need to move fully into your adulthood. Books are available starting today online, Barnes & Noble bookstore, Amazon.com, in your local bookstore, so you can get them online. And I hope people will follow me at Dr. Lois Frankel.
Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate another chance to get to know you and talk to you, and may this be your best day ever, okay?
Thank you so much. Take good care now.